This one strikes a good balance. Most people couldn't even stand straight wearing one of those. You, however... Try to bring this back in one piece. Sword and board.
most certainly why things are frozen over.
Malfunctioning, then.
Indisputably. The ice buildup must be causing a cyclical localized reaction.
Sure. I'll take care of it.
Good idea. Swampy environs and intense cold is bad even for enclave parchment. Best to lower the risk.
Already warming up. Hope I didn't damage the priceless artifact too much.
Can't make an omelette, as they say.
A lot of notes here. Water damage from the cold and melt, though. Let's see. Materials. Huh. That's how you visualize a pattern. Lots of marginal notes. These have to be from Lucia. She mentions a flood in the later passages.
Perfect. We should check her other workshop, too.
We?
You. Please?
I'm on it. The surge clearly hit Denevron hard. Still, what a view. A body, ahead. Outfit looks like our spying friends.
So, it's a uniform.
There's a note in his pouch. New drop. Market Loomgate, it says. But wait. Under his mask, he's scorched. Aurea, this looks like the wound on your wing. Only it's everywhere.
But there's no tangle there.
Could he have been caught in the flood?
Seems likely. Proof we should take that warning seriously.
I think we should look into that drop his note mentioned.
Especially if it's near a loom gate.
There's a small compartment here, hidden in the statue, already open and empty.
often heard that as you entered the perch, the bustle of Denevron would begin to crescendo until it peaked in the market. The Tattered Mantle. I've heard so many stories of this tavern. Always rowdy.
The record said this place was registered to our enchantress of interest, Lucia. It sure doesn't look like a saboteur or smuggler's den. On the Workings of Archons by L. de Crassus. Seems promising. Dom?
Certainly topical. There were references to it in those notes you found, come to think of it. Definitely bring it back. Another piece of the puzzle. Careful. A sledgeworm can throw things over 3 times its size.
These streets running in parallel are known as the Three Sisters. Many weavers hosteled here.
Before the surge, the Denevron market was famous across the Maida. Caravans left the enclave with enchanted treasures.
Broker's Arch, the market loom gate.
Same spot as the last statue. Struck a vein, as my dad used to say.
Wait, I was half listening. Are you hurt?
Metaphor. Her dad was a miner.
We've got a tally sheet of some sort. A series of numbers below. And a bunch of garbled text below that. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I might.
Where am I? Underground.
That barrier almost looks like the veil.
And the panel looks like our scribe. Anyone know what it is?
No, idea.
Similar design to a scry, but it looks like it's a permanent installation. Like it interfaces with the room. Could this be the harness?
Must be. It seems like Asylum involved sealing away whatever's beyond this barrier.
With this discovery and everything else you found, I should be able to piece together what Asylum actually was.
A dead body and a hidden cache of materials. It sounds like the start of a Skuld's tale.
All we need is a saber conveniently placed on the mantle and we're set.
More seriously, you said you had an idea about that sheet?
Before signing on with Aurea, I worked the relief ships between my home and Udea. A Don Brenning initiative, mind you. Our neighbours across the bay love to claim otherwise. The dockers always wanted big loads for the cranes. But certain things, like, say, herbs, you'd only ship in small quantities. Over the years, the convoys developed a system where you'd have runners and haulers. Runners would make quick trips and bring small goods to a drop. Haulers would pack the cargo together and make longer hauls to the docks.
You think we're looking at a similar system, then?
Absolutely, I do. It's the sheet you found. That's a requisition for a runner if I've ever seen one. And note how it says Scout Group 23 here. That's a lot of groups.
Which means my mysterious observer is part of a large organization.
And an active one.
When you say requisition...
Think of it like an order. Bread, cheese, carrots. But left at the drop for the runner to prioritize before the next gather. It takes forethought. There's necessary lag between the order going out and being filled. But any logistician worth their salt can see a few months ahead and plan accordingly.
How can you be sure the Enclave folks would use similar methods to yours?
It's centuries old, and you don't fix what wasn't broken, especially in a crisis. And from the state of the capital, they were definitely in crisis.
Do the items they're asking for seem important?
No, I don't think so. Lane thinks the garble at the bottom might be, but not the order itself. They're prioritizing fabricated items over raw goods.
What would that indicate?
At a guess, our Hearthsiders have lost, or were expecting to lose, production capacity and wanted backup parts.
Kaz, I have to ask. How does it feel having this specific piece of information at hand right when we need it?
Why?
Because if we suddenly needed to know about Calnhaven or export quotas, I would feel pretty special.
How is that a thing you know exactly?
Dad was a miner. A really good one.
Promise you won't tell the others?
I can manage that.
Then yes. Yes, it feels amazing.
What do we do with this information then?
At the bottom of the sheet, there's that series of numbers and letters. Those would represent drop points. I did some digging with Lane, and they're referring to coordinates on a map of the Enclave that was made just before the surge. L7 is part of the capital, see? That's where you found this drop. So, I'm inferring that these other marked coordinates are just as likely to have drops.
I'll check them then.
If nothing else, we could find materials for our own stocks. But I'm hoping there's more.
Maybe where our Hearthsiders are hiding.
Also, Lane was looking over the orders and wanted to talk to you about the writing along the bottom.
More drops, and talk to Lane. Got it. Any luck with the materials we gathered from Lucia's workshops?
Yes. I'll let Sev fill you in.
We started with the book, which was painfully dry and highly theoretical.
Unsurprising. The Enclave was notoriously tight-lipped about the construction of the arcs.
The book was still useful, as it contained a number of craft-specific terms, shorthands and annotations. All critical. Referencing the book clarified the notes.
Without it, they bordered on deranged rant, especially at the end.
Sort of a window into her thinking.
We suspect Lucia spent a long time in isolation while working on these.
She covered many topics, but the most...
Who exactly was Lucia? It seems like she had a lot going on.
brilliant, but disturbed. She harbored a severe hatred of Enclave leadership, bordering on obsession.
Reams of fiercely colorful text, just to say some very rude things, especially about the Eye, their leader.
She was also, at one point, one of the most respected enchanters in the Enclave. She worked on something she refused to name, but was clearly of deep significance to the Enclave itself. Called it the source of all our problems.
Sadly, she only danced around that subject, and never offered details.
We know the Hearthsiders spent years working in Denevron after the Surge. Why do we think Lucia ended up so far from the capital?
It's evident she disagreed with the leaders of the Enclave and gathered others around her who agreed. There's talk of several meetings taking place in the Mire, most likely to be away from prying eyes.
Called her group the Verdant Minds. Very planty.
I like it. It's poetic.
Her workshop was a little brisk, even for my tastes. Any idea why?
She was fascinated with Enclave technology, specifically the dismantling, disruption, and repurposing of it.
She was experimenting with aeroliths, the massive enchanted stones that control the Enclave's weather. When the effect is accidentally concentrated, it can be quite intense. We suspect she was experimenting with the aerolith in relation to the floods. She predicted their start.
How do those devices I found with her mark on them tie into all of this?
In her final notes, her obsession shifted from the Enclave's leadership to the miasma flood. She was determined to find a way to stop it. On one hand, she looked to the aeroliths as a mitigation. Could they repel the miasma?
In the end, her answer was No. And so she turned to disruption. We think the arcs were tests. Could she shut them down?
And if so, could she shut down something larger?
She was clearly successful at least once. Maybe twice if we count the one outside the Veil.
Indeed, and when we're doing more general questions, that is what we must talk about.
All intriguing information. But we should focus on the Flood. Does she have an answer for us?
Partially. This is the design.
Her research led her to one conclusion. To stop the floods. She needed to disrupt a barrier of some sort. The frustrating thing is that she never explains what barrier or where it could be found.
She assumed, unfortunately, that anyone else reading it would know what she was talking about.
Her design is detailed and specific. The device it would create inverts the flow of magic in enchanted objects, disrupting them for a time.
We think the devices we found on the arcs were prototypes, small experiments to determine efficacy and duration.
So what's the catch? If the floods are still happening, clearly she didn't build one.
Lucia's thimble, as she calls it, requires some highly specialized components. It has to withstand considerable magical flow, far more than what's produced by an arc.
It's like how mass scales exponentially. Just because you can build a scale model of an aqueduct doesn't mean the real thing can support its own weight.
If, and it is a very big if, we could find those components, we could construct Lucia's thimble. We have the expertise.
We'll find them. It's just a matter of time.
I only hope we have enough.
The other thing we'll need is a source of magical flame. Solar's mantle won't be enough by itself.
I can handle that part easily. Okay, so we have clear next steps. Just one more thing. What happened to Lucia?
The flood. Our best guess, at any rate. There's no sign of her.
I know we need to discuss the barrier and its potential ties to the flood. But want to give me a rundown of the research first?
Of course. Years after the surge, there was an inexplicable spike in casualties.
You don't think it's due to the arcs going hostile?
Well, that may be part of it, but we can't be certain due to the information blackout. All we know is that it nearly wiped the Hearthsiders out. What seems to have saved them was Asylum's execution. A defensive measure that involved sealing the underground behind a magical barrier.
Almost like the Veil.
Exactly like the Veil.
So the Enclave didn't just hide information from the rest of the Mater, but their own people as well.
Judging from the secrecy and a few of the letters you found, I would guess that high-level officials were paranoid. Clearly, not everyone was in favor of this measure, and some might have wished to thwart it.
People like Lucia.
And a dissenting group known as the Verdant Minds that she had ties to. Though, It's entirely unclear what those ties were.
You said the casualties spiked long after the surge. Can you elaborate on what might have caused this?
This is truly the thousand-fairer question. With the information blackout, I can't find a concrete link to the cause across hundreds of pages. Ark hostility could certainly be a factor. Clearly, numerous weavers were killed by their own defences. The recorded minutes from other meetings in the war room illustrate a long period of geological instability following the surge as well. Aftershocks and earthquakes and... well, not to mention the outskirts grew more dangerous each year as the creatures were allowed to breed unculled. But these threats seemed to plateau in the early years after the surge. There is no mention of the spike that resurfaced and prompted asylum.
That's so strange.
It is.
Khan Stanild gave the orders to execute Asylum. Do we know anything else about him?
Judging from the series of letters between him and the commander, it would seem that, at the time, he was recently elected. And judging from the frequency with which he followed up on the commander's progress with Asylum, this defensive measure was a key pillar in his political platform. He seemed to grow increasingly concerned with his popularity among civilians in the most recent letters.
Ugh, isn't that kind of slimy?
Leveraging a security crisis to consolidate political influence? Yes, it's incredibly slimy and effective.
And the commander? Do we know what happened to him?
It would appear that Asylum was executed successfully, so perhaps he is still alive. But until we find the Hearthsiders, we can't know for sure.
It's got to be where the Hearthsiders went, right? Remember, the letter mentioned they were evacuated from the city.
To an undisclosed location. We have no real confirmation that they are down there.
But it would make sense, wouldn't it? After all, asylum can mean shelter or safekeeping.
It can also mean prison. I know everyone wants an easy answer to where they went, but something just doesn't add up. You would think there would be at least one document linking Asylum to the evacuation of the city, and there simply isn't.
So, back to the barrier. Think it's the one Lucia was trying to take down?
Yes, the very same. She was right, too. It's causing the miasma floods. The raw magic that off-gasses from the veil is what causes the tangles to cluster at its base. In speaking with Darm, we theorized that this second barrier could potentially be doing the same thing, except in a more pressurized environment, like, say, within a barrier of kinetic magic.
We don't get small pockets of raw magic like tangles. We get floods of it.
Precisely.
So we need to remove Asylum's barrier to stop the flood. Lucia's thimble could undo the barrier, but we don't have the parts to build it yet.
Those parts just became essential.
Lane, could I...
You wanted to talk about the supply orders?
Indeed. It's about the gibberish along the bottom. Notice how the writing is in a different hand.
Yes, I can see that.
We're looking at a cipher. Someone sharing encoded notes.
Can you give me a quick rundown on encoding so I'm sure I'm following?
A favourite topic of mine? Cipher is a blanket term for securing text so that only an intended recipient can read it. They range from reasonably simple swaps of letters to complex changes that require devices or key sheets to solve. But, as notes quickly added to supply orders, the codes we are dealing with were simple by necessity.
What's your background with ciphers, Lane?
There's something of a hobby for me. Specifically, breaking them.
A fan of knowing secrets.
More a fan of information being shared freely. But also, yes, Judean nobility relies on them heavily, and being privy to the dirty laundry of the nobles is advantageous.
You're sure we're dealing with a code and not just doodles?
While possible, it's not likely that someone would scrawl nonsense on the bottom of official orders. Why do so? To practice calligraphy? To refine their writing? Perhaps. But this is decidedly not calligraphy. Ergo, cipher.
Any initial guesses as to what the cipher says?
Hard to say exactly, but we can rule out any theories that these are tied to our mysterious Lucia. The writing's wrong, the cipher is different, the circumstances don't match. What we know is these orders were for Scout Group 23, so let's assume there is an organized group of Hearthsiders arranging these drops. At a guess, this was an unofficial channel of information passed to those in the field.
Information that would be invaluable to us.
Agreed. Why encode text if it's not significant?
Sounds like we have a cipher to break. I'll keep hitting dead drops.
Any code is easier to break with more samples. You can work on it like any other research project.
All this light stone is reflecting the heat.
It would be so much worse if it were absorbing it.
Careful using flame here. Anything flammable will ignite and spread far too easily.
should be a drop somewhere around here. Another notice. Drops must be completed and all runners to safety before the next predicted flood.
This confirms they have a way to predict the floods, and some way to stay safe.
Let's stay focused on our runners first.
Watch the tangles coming out of that chasm. The surge hit this place hard.
And look, more coral.
Must have been growing below ground.
That explains why there's so much damage here from the surge.
Rise. Religious beliefs from across the Maida were practiced in the Enclaves. But the Church of the Hallowed Pyre values monuments. They regularly erect temples and shrines.
To better spread their influence.
Why else would a religion invest in property?
This temple has seen better days.
The high pyre remains intact, though. Built to last.
Should be a drop somewhere around here. Let's see. Supplies. That's good. More orders. Huh.
What's up?
Drops will be assigned to specific teams and tracked individually to deal with recent concerns.
That's boss talk for we're watching you because someone had their hand in the cookie jar. That's all of them.
3 supply drops. Not a lot of answers.
I believe I can help with that.
Hold on. Hold on.